I was 64 years old the morning I almost died, and the craziest part is, I woke up feeling grateful. Grateful for the sunlight slipping through the curtains of that big old house. Grateful for the quiet. Grateful I was still alive to see another day, after everything I'd already survived. I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror, smoothing my silver hair back with trembling fingers, telling myself, "You did good, Eleanor. You built something real. You raised a son. You made it." I didn't know that same son was planning to put me in the ground. The meeting was scheduled for 10 sharp. Lawyers, accountants, a boardroom full of polished smiles. I'd been putting it off for months, but that day I'd finally agreed to sign the paperwork transferring majority ownership of my company to my son, Daniel. Everyone said it was the natural thing. Succession planning. Legacy. Family first. Daniel kept saying, "Mom, you deserve rest. Let me carry the load." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. My daughter-in-law, Veronica, was already downstairs when I came down the staircase. She always looked perfect, hair neat, makeup soft but expensive, smile warm enough to melt butter. She wrapped me in a hug that felt practiced, like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. "Big day," she said sweetly. "Are you nervous?" "A little," I admitted. 40 years is a long time to let go. She laughed softly. "You're not letting go. You're just trusting family." That word, trust, used to mean everything to me. The drive to the office felt strange. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was off. My stomach felt tight, like I'd skipped a meal, even though I hadn't. I chalked it up to stress. Big decisions do that to you. The conference room was all glass and chrome, overlooking the city skyline I'd helped build contracts in for decades. I sat at the head of the table like always. Daniel sat to my right. Veronica hovered nearby, playing the supportive wife. That's when she brought the coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting the cup gently in front of me. "Extra cream, just how you like it." I smiled. "You always remember." "I try," she said. The coffee smelled normal. Rich. Warm. Comforting. I wrapped my hands around the cup and felt the heat seep into my palms. My hands had been shaking, and I figured the caffeine would help steady me. But before I took a sip, the maid, Rosa, walked in. Rosa had been working for us less than a year. Quiet woman. Older than me by a few years maybe. She moved carefully, always respectful, never said much unless spoken to. She was carrying a tray of documents when she suddenly stumbled. It all happened fast. She bumped into my chair. The coffee sloshed. Then it spilled, right onto my blouse and lap. "Oh my God." Veronica gasped, jumping up. "Rosa. What are you doing?" I felt the heat soak into my clothes. Papers rustled. Chairs scraped. Everyone stood at once. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Grant," Rosa said, voice shaking. "I didn't see." As Veronica fussed and Daniel scolded her under his breath, Rosa leaned closer to me, her face inches from mine. Her lips barely moved. And she whispered, "Please don't drink it. Just trust me." My heart slammed so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I stared at her, stunned. She straightened immediately, eyes downcast, apologizing again like nothing had happened. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Veronica snapped. "Do you have any idea?" "It's fine," I cut in, louder than I meant to. Everyone froze. I don't know what made me say it. Instinct. Fear. Something deep in my bones. "I'll change my blouse," I added. "We'll start in 5 minutes." Daniel looked annoyed. "Mom, the lawyers." "They can wait," I said, firm. "This is my company. I say 5 minutes." That was the first time I noticed something else. Daniel wouldn't look me in the eye. In the restroom, I scrubbed my blouse with shaking hands. My reflection looked pale. Older than I felt. My thoughts raced. Don't drink it. Trust her. Why would she say that? Rosa had no reason to lie. No motive. No history of drama. Veronica, on the other hand. When I went back in, Veronica had already placed a fresh cup of coffee on the table, same cup, refilled. Here, she said gently. I asked them to make you another one. I stared at that cup like it was a rattlesnake. My hands were trembling again. My chest felt tight. My mouth dry. I smiled anyway. Thank you, dear, I said. And then, without anyone noticing, I slid my cup just a few inches to the right, and pulled Veronica's cup closer to me. She didn't see it. No one did. The meeting resumed. Papers spread out. Pens uncapped. Veronica lifted the cup. And took a sip. 5 minutes later, her smile disappeared. And that's when everything finally started to fall apart. I watched her face change color. And realized the coffee was never meant for me to finish signing those papers alive. The first thing I noticed was how quiet Veronica got. She'd been sipping that coffee like it was nothing, nodding along while the lawyer droned on about shares and voting power. But right around the time they started sliding the first contract toward me, her hand froze midair. Her smile slipped. Not all at once. Just enough. I'd known that woman for 12 years. I knew every version of her smile, the polite one, the fake one, the I just won one. What I was seeing now wasn't any of those. This one looked strained. Tight. Like her face was working against her. She swallowed hard. Are you okay? Daniel asked, not even looking up from the paperwork. Yeah, she said quickly. Too quickly. Just, coffee's hot. She took another sip anyway. That's when her fingers started shaking. Subtle. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But when you're my age, you notice everything. You notice patterns. You notice fear. You notice when someone's body betrays them before their mouth does. Her breathing got shallow. She pressed a hand to her chest like she was smoothing her blouse, but I saw the panic in her eyes when she glanced at Daniel. And Daniel saw it too. He whispered. What's wrong? She leaned toward him, murmured something I couldn't hear. His face changed. That's when my stomach dropped. Because that look, that sharp flash of alarm, wasn't the look of a husband worried about his wife's health. It was the look of someone whose plan just went sideways. Mom, Daniel said suddenly, standing up. We need to pause this meeting. The lawyer frowned. We're mid-signature. I said pause, Daniel snapped. Veronica stood too fast. The chair screeched behind her. She swayed, grabbed the table to steady herself. I think I need air, she said, her voice cracking now. Something's wrong. I stayed seated. Calm. Watching. Should I call an ambulance? One of the accountants asked. No. Veronica blurted. Too loud. Too desperate. Everyone turned to her. She cleared her throat. I mean, no, that won't be necessary. Maybe my blood sugar. Daniel rushed to her side. Sit down. Sit down. But she didn't sit. She couldn't. Her knees buckled slightly, and Daniel had to grab her elbow to keep her upright. Sweat had broken out along her hairline. Her skin looked grey. And that's when Rosa appeared again, standing quietly near the doorway. Her eyes met mine. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Because now I understood exactly why she'd whispered what she did. Get her water, Daniel barked. Rosa moved immediately, but I saw her do something deliberate. She poured the water slowly, carefully, never taking her eyes off Veronica. Veronica took one sip. Then another. Then she gagged. The sound cut through the room like glass shattering. She bent over, coughing hard, hand clutching her throat. Jesus, call 911, someone said. Daniel hesitated. Just for a second. That hesitation told me more than any confession ever could. Daniel, I said quietly. He looked at me, startled, like he'd forgotten I was even there. What did you put in that coffee? The room went dead silent. Veronica froze, eyes wide. Daniel laughed, too sharp, too fake. Mom, what are you talking about? I stood up slowly. My legs felt steady, even though my heart was racing. That coffee, I said, pointing. The one meant for me. What was in it? Veronica started crying. Big, dramatic sobs. I don't feel good, she gasped. Why would you say something like that right now? Classic deflection. But Rosa stepped forward. Mrs. Grant, she said softly, may I speak? Daniel spun on her. Absolutely not. I asked her, I said. And she will speak. Rosa swallowed, then looked straight at me. This morning, when I cleaned the kitchen, I saw Mrs. Hale add something to the coffee machine reservoir. It was a small vial. Clear liquid. She didn't see me. Veronica screamed. That's a lie. Daniel shouted at the same time. This is insane. But the lawyer had already pulled out his phone. I'm calling emergency services, he said. And the police. Veronica collapsed into the chair, shaking violently now. I didn't mean, she sobbed. I just wanted things to stop hurting. Daniel stared at her like he'd never seen her before. And suddenly, I knew. This wasn't just her plan. This was their plan. Because when the paramedics arrived and lifted Veronica onto the stretcher, Daniel didn't follow her. He stayed right where he was. Watching me. Calculating. And in that moment, I realized the danger wasn't over. Not even close. The paramedics wheeled Veronica out like she was made of glass, oxygen mask tight on her face, her eyes darting everywhere except at me. She reached out once, like she wanted to grab Daniel's hand, but he didn't move. He stood there stiff as a post, jaw clenched, watching the stretcher roll away. That told me more than anything else that day. A man worried about his wife would have followed her without thinking. A man protecting himself stays put. The conference room smelled like spilled coffee and fear. Nobody knew where to sit anymore. Papers lay scattered like they'd lost their meaning, which, honestly, they had. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Grant. I think we should postpone. There won't be any more paperwork today, I said calmly. My voice surprised even me. It sounded steady. Final. Daniel turned toward me slowly. Mom, this is getting out of hand. No, I said. What's getting out of hand is that my daughter-in-law just drank something that put her on a stretcher, and it was meant for me. Rosa stood quietly by the wall. She looked small, but there was steel in her spine now. I want everyone to leave, I said. Except Daniel. And Rosa. The accountant hesitated. Is that wise? I've run this company for 40 years, I said. I don't need advice today. One by one, they filed out. Whispering. Avoiding eye contact. The door clicked shut behind the last one, and suddenly it was just the three of us. The silence was loud. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. This is insane. You're letting paranoia. Stop, I said. Not loud. Just firm. Sit down. He didn't want to. I could see it. But something in my tone must have reminded him who raised him, because he Saturday. I turned to Rosa. Tell me everything. Slowly. She nodded, hands clasped tight in front of her apron. I noticed Mrs. Hale watching you closely these past weeks. Asking questions. About your medications. Your doctor appointments. Whether you'd been tired. Confused. Daniel snapped, that's called caring. Rosa didn't even look at him. This morning, I saw her pour something from a small vial into the coffee machine. I googled the label later. I took a picture. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, hands shaking now. She slid it across the table to me. I looked down. The label was blurry, but clear enough. A colorless, tasteless liquid. Heart suppressant. Dangerous in small doses. Deadly in larger ones. Especially for someone my age. I felt cold spread through my chest, like ice water. Daniel stood up fast. You went through my wife's things. That's illegal. Rosa met his eyes finally. Trying to save a life is not illegal. I looked up at my son. My son. Daniel, I said quietly, how long? He stared at me like I was a stranger. How long have you been planning to kill me? His face went blank. Not angry. Not shocked. Blank. That scared me more than yelling ever could. You're being dramatic, he said. Nobody planned anything. I stood up. Then explain why you hesitated when they asked to call 911. Explain why you didn't go with your wife. Explain why she panicked when the ambulance was mentioned. He opened his mouth. Closed it. For the first time in his life, he had nothing ready. That company, he finally said, voice low, bitter, was supposed to be mine years ago. There it is, I whispered. You kept dangling it, he snapped. One more year. One more condition. One more lecture about responsibility. Meanwhile, we were drowning. Debt. Lifestyle. Expectations. So murder was the solution? I asked. He laughed bitterly. You were already sick half the time. It wouldn't have even looked suspicious. That sentence broke something in me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt empty. That's enough, I said. I'm calling the police. He lunged toward the table. Mom, don't. Rosa stepped between us without thinking. I already did, she said softly. Sirens wailed in the distance like they'd been waiting for permission. Daniel froze. The color drained from his face. You ruined everything, he whispered, not to Rosa, but to me. No, I said. You did. The police came fast. Questions. Statements. Evidence. Rosa showed them the photos. The vial was found later in Veronica's purse at the hospital. They took Daniel away in handcuffs. He didn't look back. That hurt more than I expected. That night, I went home alone. The house felt different. Like it had been holding its breath for months and finally exhaled. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the same coffee machine. And I realized something that chilled me deeper than the poison ever could. If Rosa hadn't spoken up, if she hadn't accidentally spilled that cup, I would have signed those papers. I would have gone home. And I would not have woken up. That night, I realized something that shook me harder than the poison ever could. The danger wasn't over. Just because they didn't kill me didn't mean they were done trying to control me. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside my own house, and for the first time in 23 years, I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. The air felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. I didn't turn on the lights right away. I stood there in the dark, purse still hanging from my shoulder, listening. The refrigerator hummed. The clock in the hallway ticked like it always had. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. I whispered to myself, "You're still alive, Evelyn." That name sounded strange in my own mouth now. Like it belonged to a woman who used to exist, before she almost died at a conference table. I went straight to the kitchen. The coffee machine was still sitting there, clean, innocent, shiny. The same machine my daughter-in-law had smiled beside that morning. The same one my son walked past every day like it was nothing. I stared at it for a long time. Then I unplugged it. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. I pressed my palms flat against the table and waited for the tremors to pass. They didn't. I thought about Daniel, my only child. The boy I raised after his father died. The boy who once cried when he broke a neighbor's window and insisted on confessing because, in his words, "Mom, lying feels worse." That boy was gone. Or maybe he never really existed the way I believed he did. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like someone standing just out of sight. I checked the locks 3 times. Then 4. At around 3 in the morning, my phone vibrated on the nightstand. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Mrs. Grant, a woman's voice said, calm and steady. This is Detective Lena Morales. I know it's late, but I wanted to follow up while everything is still fresh. I sat up straighter. I'm awake. She didn't sound surprised. She asked about my health. My medications. Who had access to my schedule? Who handled my finances? Who attended my doctor's appointments with me? Each question felt like a pin being pushed into a balloon I didn't realize was already stretched too thin. Daniel, I said quietly. My son handled most of that. There was a pause on the line. Not silence, calculation. Mrs. Grant, Detective Morales said carefully, this wasn't impulsive. This was deliberate. Repeated. Calculated. I closed my eyes. I know, I whispered. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the wall until dawn. By morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Board members. Old friends. People who suddenly wanted to check in. People who'd ignored my calls for years, but now wanted reassurance that I was still standing. Funny how close you have to get to dying before people remember you exist. Rosa came that afternoon. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure she still belonged there. Like she thought she might have crossed some invisible line by saving my life. You didn't have to come, I said gently. Yes, she replied. I did. I made tea instead of coffee. Neither of us mentioned it. My hands shook as I poured, and this time, I didn't hide it. You saved my life, I said. She looked down at her cup. I just spilled coffee. No, I said firmly. You made a choice. Her shoulders sagged like she'd been carrying that moment alone for too long. I almost didn't, she admitted. I told myself it wasn't my place. That I could be wrong. That I'd lose my job. What stopped you? I asked. She swallowed hard. My mother. She told me how her own family had slowly taken everything from her mother, money, independence, confidence, while smiling and saying it was for her own good. By the time she realized, Rosa said, there was nothing left to save. Something inside me cracked open. I won't forget what you did, I told her. Not ever. 2 days later, the toxicology results came back. Clear. Precise. Undeniable. The substance found in Veronica's system matched the residue from the cup. Enough to stop a heart quietly in someone my age. Enough to look natural. Enough to bury me without questions. Veronica was arrested first. Daniel tried to act shocked. That lasted exactly 48 hours. They found the messages. The searches. The bank transfers. Insurance paperwork dated months earlier. Plans layered on top of lies. When I saw him in court for the first time, he finally looked at me. Not with regret. With anger. Like I'd ruined something that was already his. That's when the truth landed fully. He hadn't loved me for years. He'd just been waiting. I sold the house not long after. I couldn't walk those halls without hearing fake concern in every memory. I couldn't sit at the table where my own son planned my death. I moved somewhere smaller. Quieter. Safer. Rosa stayed close, not as help, not as staff, but as someone who had earned a place beside me. Every morning, we drink coffee together now. But we always look at each other first. Because trust isn't blind anymore. And what happened next? What I chose to do with the life I almost lost. That changed everything. People think the worst part of betrayal is the moment you discover it. They are wrong. The worst part comes after, when the shock wears off and you're left sitting alone with the truth, realizing the people who were supposed to love you were already gone long before you almost died. I saw Daniel one last time before the trial. They brought him into the holding room in handcuffs, and I swear, for half a second, I searched his face for the boy I raised. The kid who used to run into the house yelling my name like the world didn't exist unless I heard him. I didn't find him. What I saw was a grown man with cold eyes and clenched fists, looking at me like I was the enemy. "You didn't have to do this," he said. I laughed. A short, sharp sound that surprised both of us. "I didn't do anything," I told him. "You did." He shook his head like I was being dramatic. Like I always was in his mind. "You could have handled this quietly. Family business. Instead, you made it public." That's when it hit me. He wasn't sorry. He was embarrassed. "You tried to kill me," I said calmly. Veronica, my daughter-in-law, sat beside him, her mouth tight, her eyes darting like she was already planning her next move. She didn't deny it either. She just watched me like I was a chess piece that refused to fall. "You're overreacting," Daniel muttered. It was supposed to look natural. That sentence changed something inside me permanently. I stood up. "I'm done protecting you," I said. I should have stopped doing that years ago. Neither of them followed me out. And that told me everything. The trial was uglier than I expected. They dragged my health into it. My age. My medications. Tried to paint me as confused, fragile, slipping. One lawyer even suggested I'd imagined the poisoning. That was until Rosa took the stand. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't cry. Didn't dramatize a thing. She just told the truth. How she noticed patterns. How Veronica insisted on making my drinks. How Daniel dismissed my symptoms. How she watched me fade week after week. Then she told them about the coffee. About the spill. About the whisper. The courtroom went dead quiet. I saw jurors lean forward like they couldn't afford to miss a word. When they played the recordings, messages between Daniel and Veronica, I couldn't look at the screen. I didn't need to. I'd already heard enough betrayal for one lifetime. What broke me wasn't the plot. It was the laughter. They laughed about me. About how trusting I was. About how easy it was to distract me with affection. About how old people never question family. That night, I went home and cried for the first time since it all started. Not because they tried to kill me. But because they never loved me the way I loved them. After the guilty verdicts came down, people expected me to feel relieved. I didn't. I felt empty. You don't get closure when your only child becomes someone you don't recognize. You don't get peace just because justice shows up late. I didn't attend the sentencing. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with Rosa, drinking coffee from plain white mugs, no sugar, no milk. I don't know who I am without them, I admitted. Rosa looked at me gently. You're someone who survived. That stuck with me. Over the next few months, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I sold the old house. I restructured the company. I rewrote my will. I cut off every single person who knew the truth and stayed silent. You'd be shocked how many people prefer comfort over courage. Rosa stayed. Not because she had to. Because she chose to. One afternoon, while we were walking through the office building I'd just reclaimed, I stopped and looked around. These walls heard everything, I said. Every lie. Rosa nodded. Then maybe they should hear something better now. That's when the idea came to me. If I survived this, I wasn't going to waste it pretending nothing happened. I wasn't going to shrink. I wasn't going to stay quiet so people could stay comfortable. I was going to make sure what happened to me didn't happen to someone else who didn't have a Rosa. And the decision I made next. The one that changed the direction of everything. It didn't come from revenge. It came from clarity. Because once you stare death in the face and live, you stop worrying about being polite. And you start worrying about being useful. What I built after that. What Daniel and Veronica never saw coming. That was the part that truly scared them. After the trial ended, people expected me to disappear for a while. They thought I'd retreat somewhere warm, live off memories, and let lawyers and managers clean up the mess my son and his wife left behind. That's what people assume women my age do when life hits them hard, step aside. I didn't. I showed up to my office 3 weeks after the verdict. No announcement. No press. Just me, walking through the front doors like I'd done for decades. Some employees froze when they saw me. Others looked relieved. A few looked nervous, and I made a mental note of that. I called a full leadership meeting that same morning. When I walked into the boardroom, every conversation stopped. The chair at the head of the table was empty. It had been Daniel's for the last year. I pulled it out and sat down. "I'm back," I said. "And we are going to talk honestly today." Nobody interrupted me. I went through the numbers first. The money that went missing. The contracts that never should have been signed. The favors granted to people who never earned them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just laid everything out on the table and let the silence do the work. "Anyone who helped this happen," I said calmly, "will no longer work here by the end of the week." Some faces went pale. Some nodded, like they'd been waiting for permission to stop pretending. By Friday, 5 executives were gone. By Monday, the company felt like it could breathe again. At home, life was changing too. I downsized on purpose. Fewer rooms. Fewer echoes. A place where I didn't feel like memories were watching me from every corner. Rosa helped me pack. Not once did she touch anything without asking first. That's how I knew she understood respect in a way my own family hadn't. We started having coffee every morning. Same time. Same table. At first, it was quiet. Not awkward, just careful. Like two people learning how to exist without fear in the room. One morning, she looked at me over her mug and said, "You don't flinch anymore." I hadn't noticed, but she was right. I wasn't jumping at sounds. I wasn't second-guessing my instincts. I wasn't apologizing for taking up space. Something solid had returned to me. A few months later, I met with my attorney. Not to talk about appeals or lawsuits. To talk about legacy. "I don't want everything I built to end with my son's name," I told him. "I want it to mean something." He listened. So did Rosa, who sat quietly beside me the entire time. That's when I decided to start something new. Not a charity born from pity. A foundation built from experience. We focused on protecting older people from financial manipulation, quiet abuse, and the kind of smiling betrayal that nearly killed me. Rosa became my partner in it, not because I owed her, but because she earned it. She understood the signs. The patterns. The silence people mistake for safety. Word spread fast. People started calling. A banker who noticed strange withdrawals. A nurse who saw bruises explained away too smoothly. A neighbor who heard yelling behind closed doors. Each story reminded me that what happened to me wasn't rare. It was just hidden better. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to contact me. Letters at first. Then messages through attorneys. I didn't open them. I didn't need explanations. I already knew the truth. Forgiveness, for me, didn't mean reopening doors that almost killed me. It meant closing them without hate. Veronica never reached out. And honestly, that told me she understood exactly what she'd done. As the months passed, something unexpected happened. I stopped feeling ashamed. For trusting. For loving. For believing family meant safety. That shame belonged to them, not me. One evening, Rosa and I sat on the porch watching the sun drop low, coffee cooling in our hands. "You ever regret spilling that cup?" I asked. She smiled softly. "Every day I thank God I did." I nodded. So did I. Because that spilled coffee didn't just save my life. It showed me who deserved to be in it. And what came next, the way everything finally came full circle, wasn't loud or dramatic. But it was permanent. And when the final chapter arrived, I was ready for it. By the time the sentencing day arrived, I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. You can brace yourself for betrayal. You can brace yourself for courtrooms and lawyers and headlines. What you can't fully prepare for is seeing your own child in chains and realizing that nothing you do will ever bring back the person you thought you raised. The courthouse was packed. Reporters everywhere. Cameras flashing. Strangers whispering like my life was entertainment. I kept my head up. Not because I was strong, but because I refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me break. They brought Daniel in first. He looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. The confidence he used to wear like armor was gone, replaced by something hollow and bitter. When his eyes finally landed on me, there was no apology in them. Only blame. Veronica came in after him, her hair pulled back tight, face stiff like she'd practiced not feeling anything. She never looked at me. Not once. I respected that more than the fake tears she used to cry at my dinner table. The judge asked if I wanted to speak. My attorney leaned toward me and whispered, "You don't have to." I stood anyway. Not because I owed them anything. Because I owed myself the truth out loud. I walked to the podium slowly. Every step felt heavy, but steady. I didn't rush. I didn't shake. "My name is Eleanor Grant," I began. "I'm here because the people I trusted most tried to erase me quietly." The courtroom went still. I talked about the coffee. The meetings. The weeks of feeling weak while being told I was imagining things. I talked about how betrayal doesn't always come screaming. Sometimes it comes smiling and calling you Mom. I looked directly at Daniel. "For years, I believed love meant protecting you at all costs," I said. "Today, I understand love also means telling the truth." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just spoke. When I finished, I walked back to my seat and sat beside Rosa. She squeezed my hand once. That was all I needed. The sentences came down exactly as expected. Life. No parole. No dramatic reactions. Daniel stared straight ahead. Veronica closed her eyes. And just like that, it was over. Or so people thought. What nobody tells you is that endings like that don't feel like closure. They feel like quiet. A deep, unsettling quiet where you finally hear your own thoughts again. Afterward, I declined interviews. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want attention. I wanted distance. Rosa and I drove home together. No radio. No conversation. Just the road and the understanding that something massive had finally passed. That night, I slept through until morning for the first time in months. No nightmares. No jolting awake. Just rest. In the weeks that followed, I made choices that surprised people. I sold the last property connected to my old life. I stepped back from day-to-day operations at the company and promoted people who had proven loyalty without being asked. I rewrote my will from scratch. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I stopped pretending blood mattered more than behavior. Letters from Daniel started arriving again. I returned every single one unopened. People asked if that was cruel. I told them no. Cruelty is poisoning someone and smiling while you do it. Boundaries are survival. The foundation grew faster than I expected. Calls came in daily. Stories that sounded too familiar. Sons. Daughters. Caregivers. Spouses. All using the same tricks: isolation, confusion, guilt. I listened. I believed them. Because I knew how easy it is to doubt yourself when the person hurting you claims they love you. Rosa became the backbone of everything we built. Calm. Observant. Unshakable. One afternoon, I watched her explain a case to a young social worker with patience and authority, and I realized something important. Leadership doesn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like consistency. Years passed. The headlines faded. My story stopped being news and started being history. And that was exactly how I wanted it. I never saw Daniel again. I don't know if he changed. I don't know if he understood. And I no longer needed to know. Because peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from acceptance. As my 74th birthday approached, Rosa asked me what I wanted. I told her the truth. I want quiet mornings, honest coffee, and a life where I never doubt my instincts again. She smiled. You already have that. She was right. What happened next, the way everything finally settled, the way my life took on a meaning I never expected at this age, didn't come from revenge or justice. It came from choosing who I let stand beside me. And the final chapter of this story. The one that truly defines how everything turned out. That's where I finally found peace. People ask me all the time if I ever stopped loving my son. That question tells me they've never truly been betrayed by family. Love doesn't just switch off like a light. It fades slowly, painfully, like a radio losing signal mile by mile. One day you realize you're no longer reaching for it, and by then, the silence feels safer than the noise ever did. I didn't wake up one morning suddenly healed. Healing came in quiet ways. In mornings where I poured my own coffee, and didn't hesitate before taking a sip. In meetings where my voice didn't shake. In laughter that surprised me because it felt real again. I learned that surviving something like that doesn't make you bitter, if you let it teach you instead of harden you. I moved slower in life after that. Not weaker. Just more intentional. I stopped explaining myself to people who weren't listening anyway. I stopped offering second chances to folks who never deserved the first one. I stopped mistaking familiarity for loyalty. The foundation became my purpose. Not because I needed to save the world, but because I needed to give meaning to what almost took me out. Every call we took, every case we helped expose, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been stolen. I sat across from women who reminded me of myself before I knew better. Strong, capable, and slowly being convinced they were fragile. I told them the truth every time. You're not confused. You're being manipulated. Watching their shoulders drop when they realized they weren't crazy was more healing than any therapy session I ever had. Rosa stayed by my side through all of it. Not as an assistant. Not as a caretaker. As family. The kind that doesn't demand loyalty, but earns it through consistency. The kind that steps back when you need space and steps forward when you need backup. One afternoon, we were sorting through old paperwork when I found a photo of Daniel as a child. Missing teeth. Crooked smile. Arms wrapped around my leg like I was his anchor. I didn't cry. I just looked at it, then placed it back in the folder and closed it gently. Grief doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it comes with acceptance. I forgave him in my own way. Not by reaching out, but by refusing to let what he did define the rest of my life. I turned 75 last spring. No big party. No speeches. Just a small dinner with people who showed up without expecting anything in return. People who didn't know my bank balance, just my laugh. And for the first time in decades, I felt rich in the way that actually matters. Here's what I know now, and I wish someone had told me sooner. If someone rushes you, question it. If someone tells you not to ask questions, ask more. If someone benefits from your silence, that silence is costing you something. And if your gut ever whispers that something feels off, listen. Even if the voice smiling at you belongs to family. Especially then. I didn't lose my life that day in the conference room. I got it back. Not the old one I was clinging to out of habit, but a stronger, clearer version built on truth instead of obligation. So if you're watching this and something about my story feels uncomfortably familiar, don't ignore that feeling. Pay attention to who controls your money. Pay attention to who dismisses your concerns. Pay attention to who benefits when you doubt yourself. And remember this, age doesn't make you weak. It makes you experienced. And experience is dangerous to people who rely on deception. If my story helped you see something more clearly, or gave you the courage to trust yourself a little more today, then stay with me. Subscribe to this channel, because these stories aren't just entertainment. They are warnings, lessons, and reminders that it's never too late to take your life back. I'm living proof of that.